Welcome, everybody. I am thrilled to do this for the Northern Alliance today. I had a great time up in Ottawa. For those of you that came to that event, I appreciate you being there on behalf of not just the Northern Alliance, but in particular my clients and friends and family, right, Sarah? The Metro City team at this point in time, and thrilled to always help out here. Before this, and let me just reiterate when Sarah asked me this, by the way, if I look a little bit like a slob, I'm fresh off the gym and chasing an appraiser. So one of the good things about me is I actually do the job every day. So when I speak about this, it's actually what I do. It's not theory. I don't make this up. I have to practice this in the field every day and do it. And so that's the hazard of having me coach you, is that sometimes I come in looking a little bit rough and I haven't had my beauty, right? So my beauty moment, Sarah. So here we are, talking about listing presentations. And why did I bring this up? Because I'm assuming when you saw that, that triggers you to say, yes, I'd like to do that. And let me go back. Like I told Sarah, I want to talk more how I learned how to arrive better at a listing presentation, not just going into them. So with me, everything, well, I'd say about 12 years ago, everything changed to the point where, as much as I'm enthusiastic, aggressive, hyper, and I want to go get the next deal, I stopped myself and said, you have to be strategic. And so everything needs to be managed before you go do it, meaning you come up with some sort of a theoretical plan based on what you know so that you can begin to do things more correctly, right? And so I think what for me that meant was Michael Gerber in his book, The E-Myth, has this one line, and I think I've probably listened to the audio book, a whole bunch of times, read the book a bunch of times, but then suddenly it speaks to you. And one line was, how does the business really work, right? So when you look at that, how the business really works, the answer is it's predicated on listings and getting those listings. So the agents, the companies, the teams, the groups that do the best are the ones that strategically focus on the acquisition of listings. That's what they do. Why? Because the way that the business works is quite simply hiding in plain sight, right? We have an MLS system, and all of the listings are input into that MLS system so that they can be shared. And it's very similar to the stock market. So, for example, the New York Stock Exchange is all set up in a particular way that when somebody lists their stock for sale, it's on a public marketplace whereby you can have access to it. So our business is really no different.
Hello?
It's just that we just have these big clunky, we have these big clunky houses to sell. We don't have stock that moves smoothly and quickly, right? It's a little bit harder to go get the inventory, put it onto the marketplace, and then go out and get people into it. So it's slower, but it's the same mechanism. That's how the business works. So that begs the question, if I were to challenge myself and then subsequently all of you, well, who controls the listings? Because the person that controls the listings is in the power seat, right? If you think about that very simply, the person who has the listing all of a sudden puts that in there, and assuming, and I'll get into the listing presentation materials next that I devised, is that assuming that that person has priced it correctly, who goes to work for you? Everybody who has a buyer that would be interested in that type of a listing at that price. And these days, because of syndication, meaning once that listing goes into the MLS, it is syndicated. If you've ever seen the letters RSS, really simple syndication, that's how digitally this works. It just gets sucked up into the internet everywhere. Mostly in Canada, it's realtor.ca. For us, it's Zillow and Redfin, realtor.com, sure. But realtor.com, ironically, is the first to the game. So it gets just sucked up there, and every other public website that buys that feed. So digital made the exposure many, many, many more fold than the olden days. I mean, I'm 25 years in the business where they used to print a booklet with pictures and details of properties that were listed every 2 weeks. And you would rush to get that booklet, and then you would rush to your clients, right? Now it's instantaneous. And it might sound like, wow, isn't that great? It's going to make everything easier. It actually made things more complicated. And most agents got reactive, not proactive. So it's a huge opportunity I saw. I mean, I'll explain that in a second. But the idea is you've got to control listings if you want to build yourself a sustainable and predictable business. These are all thoughts I had for myself. I have to this day. I teach no matter what level. If you're brand new and you're a Griffin agent, that's exactly what I'm going to teach you. If you're Tarek, Steve, and Sarah, with this mega growing, group, you're getting the same fundamentals. In fact, Sarah can attest to that, that we keep trying to break it down to one simple concept. Are you proactively seeking and searching the acquisitions of listings at or above the median price within the geography that you'd really prefer to do business? Especially, Sarah, if we went back to what we've done with Steve, then we could really specifically say with Steve, we took him as an asset at the company and made him the luxury, right? The luxury guy with this new strategic vision. We were very specific with him that that's what we wanted him to do. And you could attest to how much that's changed, right? Simply by changing his personal strategic vision. Yeah, you want to weigh in on that for a second? Because I think that's important as an example.
We were able to increase the average sale price for him by over $100,000 just by becoming intentional on that.
Which is significant because when I first started training teams in auto, which is multi, and I met you and you were at another place, what I discovered was that when I had this as a standard, you must get listings at or above the median price in the area within which you really want to do business, not where the business is taking you, but where you really want to do business strategically. And what we found was every mega team was selling on average properties less than the median number in Ottawa, which is a stunner, right? Because you wake up and you realize, oh my gosh, the strategy to get these listings has been to get them anywhere, at any price, in any place, in any time, which ends up having you default towards going to internet leads, which I warned Steve especially, the quality of those is going to go down over time because we're going to burn out the consumer because everybody's getting them. The herd is there and we are just pestering people. And more sophisticated people are less likely to stay in that game. They will withdraw and not expose themselves to that attack, right? And that's exactly what happened. So that $100,000 increase, and refresh me, what's the median price in Ottawa at least these days?
Right now it's I think it's the mid 650s right now.
Okay, so if we're mid 650s and Steve goes up to 750, that's a significant revenue increase per listing. That's the other thing, okay? So what you have to look at, again, fundamentally and at the foundation, if you're in this call and you never really strategically thought that you can be a listing agent, absolutely you can. And I teach 22-year-olds how to follow this kind of concept. And I can give you a very real example of my own sales machine, not my brokerage, my own sales machine, this little small group where Annabelle, who's been an apprentice for my client care manager for 3 years, became an agent on her own in addition. And she went out and executed our open house plan, which was one of the ways that we tried to get new listings, listed the neighbor for $960 and sold it. So it wasn't someday, it was that day, because we simply began to build a system on how we would acquire these, right? So that's really where it begins, is that the strategic thinking that you can be, and I'm going to define luxury for you in a very, very loose term, because luxury equates with profitable. So on Wednesday nights, I started doing this free course, and you're all welcome to come over there. It's called the Profitable Real Estate Agent Plan on Facebook, free group, the Profitable Real Estate Agent Plan. You could come in there. And I have an agenda. If you go in there, I'll let you in there today. Go down into the files and you'll just see the agenda and you're going to see 12 steps. Those are the things that really keep me in line myself to make sure we're building this assembly line-like process to identify through strategic marketing, which is much easier than you think it is, and proactive marketing to get these listings into a conversion module where they go from lead to prospect to client. And then obviously we babysit them in the closing module and we birth them into what I call happy Griffin land, which is a happy past client who's likely to repeat, refer. So it's a fundamental, universal, immutable concept that you're trying to move this contact along to create an asset for your business. And that includes if you're brand new. The most important one, if you're brand new, is to pull one through and make sure they're happy. That's one. And that's the fundamental cornerstone of the build out of your business long term to make it what I said in the beginning. Predictable, because you can see a system working, and sustainable over the long run. No matter what happens in the greater Canada area, whether you're on here from Northern Alliance, more towards Montreal or on, it doesn't matter. The States, it doesn't matter. These are immutable ways that things behave. And that goes all the way back to Michael Gerber's book. How does the business really work? which takes some discovery. And I'm showing you very simply what that looks like. Now, if you were in the room with us in Ottawa, you would have seen the business model that really was drafted off of Michael Gerber's book. So we could separate out who you think you are right now and who you have to change that to be. Then this management brain that is probably tiny when you first start to hear this, this way of doing things, because everybody wants to run down to tactical. There's not a person that I coach in these two areas, Ottawa and Canada, where I don't say, stop, right? Thinking like a tactician or a technical worker and just hear me out. And that's exactly what I'm teaching you all today. This is first a strategic discussion before I can tell you tactically what I do at a listing presentation, okay? So that's core and fundamental. You must realize you're after listings at or above the median within the geography that you really want to do business, period. It's a thinking point that can't escape any one of you. And if you're checking out on me right now, that's your animal brain saying, too much work, shut down, we're great at buyers, right? And I'd take the listing anywhere. Of course you would do those things because they're cash flow. But this is a different discussion to awaken you and to say, you have to admit that that's universally a truth. It's not my opinion. It's just the way the business works at a profitable level. So now you come in and say, okay, how? Enough of the strategic, let's get down into the tactical and be prepared. What do we do? And it is a little strategic and tactical mixed in. So what do we do? How do we do it? Well, the first thing is, if you look at, let me see, Sarah, if I can bring up maybe the model, it's probably best to have it in front of us. So I will just share that. So as I'm speaking, you can see the same thing. Again, if you were in the room in Ottawa, you're going to see I'm consistent, right? I don't stray from this thing because it keeps me disciplined. Sarah, are we seeing that okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
So, yeah. So what happens here is what I just said to you is the strategic business vision is a business that's systematized, okay? And everybody loves that word, but nobody really knows how to do it. And Sarah can talk to you about, even at the next level, I had to put her through blood, sweat, and tears this week to document where that business is at systematically so that we can clean up those systems, because growth requires new systems or expansion thereof. And so you're always systematizing your business, but that's the strategic business vision. The strategic leadership vision is who you are, and you have to lead by really being, truthful with yourself about how this business really works, right? That's really what's most important. How does this business really work? Well, when you look at it, you have to become somebody different because you have to become a manager. You can't just, it doesn't work tactically very well, because most people that come in and I'm talking top producers that come to me, and I have a fistful of them now up in Canada between Ottawa and Montreal. And when they wash ashore to me for coaching, the first thing is, okay, breathe, slow down, especially the top producers. Who's your Sarah Corey? If you don't have a Sarah Corey, we need a Sarah Corey, because you need somebody who's a licensed client care manager to at least begin to keep the service level high. Those are strategic leadership visions of who you are. Now, today, you might not need a single person because you might be brand new, or this might just be on your own. You can't afford to get, no problem. But you still have to understand that's where you're going. You're going into a place where a business is systematized, where you don't wing it. So that when you take a vacation week, you don't come back and like, oh my gosh, where am I at? Nope, you pick up right where the system tells you to pick up. That's an entrepreneurial vision. And you're all entrepreneurs, by the way, because you're independent contractors, unless, of course, you're a licensed admin, and then you need to know this to help the person you're working with. But now you come into marketing and you say, okay, marketing is not what you all think it is. Here we go again, too fast and tactical. Leads, leads, leads. What do I get the lead? It's like this weird obsession with the word lead, because you've all been sold on that. I mean, from the movie Glengarry Glen Ross from years ago to the modern day, buy my platform and we have all the best leads. It's nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's not right. Because so what if you have a listing lead and you learn something to say? What are you going to introduce to that person who owns that listing to convince them they should do business with you above and beyond all other options, including doing nothing at all and not selling? What are you going to present to that person? And then furthermore, Are you going to even recognize whether that person truly has a real reason why they want to sell and a motivation level at a 9 to 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 inside the next 12 months? Otherwise, they're not even prospectable, and you're delusional in your ability to convince them with some script, keep them talking, build rapport, all this stuff here. It's just nonsense. I'm not saying that they're not parts of it, but I learned it's nonsense. And remember, I'm saying this as a guy who does this every day, who went from selling strategically all of these internet type of leads. You know, a lot of them had sell buys that were, I was in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. Yesterday, I was showing my $8 million listing. I just put back on my $13.5 million listing. I have a 2.95. I have to pinch myself to say, I cannot believe it was this easy to start at the median number and then just keep bringing the systematized approach to it. More intelligent people who owned more expensive property, and it actually got easier, not harder. So how did I do that? Well, I started with saying a strategic marketing plan has to have a unique selling proposition. Now, I grew up in the Craig Proctor world in full transparency, and his delusion was that his guaranteed sale program was a unique selling proposition. To me, it was a gimmick. It was a bait and switch to the extent that you would only buy the house if that person was buying one of your listings. Otherwise, it was over. So what broke down for me was it wasn't universally appealing to every seller. It didn't appeal or it didn't fit. So it wasn't universal at all. And I wanted my unique selling proposition to be universally appealing first, and I'll get into buyers briefly, but first to every seller. Why can't I come up with a unique selling proposition that I present to them that makes my brokerage, me, unique to all of them? Why can't I do that? So I sat and thought about strategic marketing ideas that I had heard along the way learning marketing. Well, the most important strategic idea in marketing is the concept built on the law of reciprocity, Robert Cialdini's book, Cialdini, called Influence, lays these rules out. And the obvious one hiding in plain sight was the law of reciprocity. How could I give away my best stuff for free? Because I kept hearing that on the internet from a lot of internet marketers, you know, in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, when they were early adopters of that simple marketing concept. Give away your best stuff for free. There was even a book by Anderson that I listened to early on, and it was all about free. And I started to think back, are there pre-internet examples of giving away free stuff? And of course there were. Again, I'm 58 years old, so you might not have this context, but you go Google it. The idea of having something given away for free as a free sample. So for example, back in my day when I was a kid, you could mail away with like shipping and handling money. You could actually put it in an envelope and they would send you back a free record in hopes that you would become part of the record club. This is back when vinyl was a thing, right? And then you would see free samples of everything. Hey, send us, you know, your information and shipping and handling, and we'll send you out this free sample of whatever it was. We'll give you a free t-shirt, right? And what they would do is they would hook that person in, because you would have this change in relationship where you would go from a lead to actually a paying customer, because you were putting money on the table and now you're paid. You paid them. So you got used to paying them. And I thought that was a brilliant idea of getting somebody convinced to become a paying client with a free sample. So you come back to our business and say, how do we apply that concept to our business? How would we apply that? So I thought to myself at an extreme level first, well, what if I gave away my service completely for free to a seller? What if I went and said, I'm going to list your house and I'm going to do everything that I do as a professional, and I'm going to sell it for free and charge you no commission. Now, of course, that's a terrible business model, but I started there. And I said, okay, well, I can't do that. And then I started to make this distinction. What if I would give away my best what to do information for free, but I didn't show them how I would do that? Because that's what I started to realize. And you've probably seen this on the internet where you go on a webinar and they give you so much what to do information, your head's spinning, you go, oh, just show me how to do it, I'll pay you, right? So it's hiding in plain sight as a mechanism. So I thought to myself, okay, I can't go there and tell you what to do and then show you how to do it and not get paid. So I went to Starbucks and I sat down. I said, in truth, what would I do? Okay, let me bring up the next slide here, and you can see how the strategy began to become tactical, okay? So what would I do? Let me see, I'm gonna bring this up first. Well, let's start with the infographic. It's the simplest way. What would I do if I did that in the right order? Not all the BS that you hear people going, oh, I marketed this. It's all BS. It's just such nonsense. Marketing a listing is so different from marketing for your own business. It's not even close to the same, right? So the truth is, if I go into a property and I do not price it correctly, then the whole thing is a moot point. It's over, right? It's just a moot point. So I have to go in and tell them the truth about how to price their property correctly, right? Now, if they don't like that price, then I have to give them education on, okay, you don't like that? So let's get into how to recondition your property. And if you can afford to spend some money, here's what I would do, and here's what I would not do. If you cannot afford to spend that money, then here's how we price that stuff out. Like you need a new roof, or you need this, we'll price it out. Okay. Then once all the conditioning, the major rocks in the jar are done, we're going to move stuff around. With or without a professional stager, we can go on the budget, get rid of all your personal stuff, open up the rooms a little bit. You have rooms choked off the way it's staged. You got to open it up and play this feng shui game. So we have flow. So the next person's vision is easier. They don't come in and their animal brain shuts down because you have stuff everywhere. We minimalize, but we use it. And if it's empty, maybe we do virtual staging, maybe you pay for a stager, whatever it is. But all of that, in truth, on how a listing really works. Remember what I said Michael Gerber's standard was, how does the business really work? Listings first. Well, how does actually listing and selling a property really work? You better get the price as good as you can get based on the condition, which can be improved or not, based on the staging, which better be improved or not. And it doesn't have to be professional. It just needs to be minimalized and cleaned up the best you can based on budget. Then and only then does marketing a listing kick in. And by the way, what does marketing a listing really consist of? So let me see if I can pull that infographic up here too. This one here, in fact, because marketing became such a big discussion with sellers and they would push back, and every one of my competitors was making it up, especially Sotheby's. Sorry to knock anybody that might be affiliated with Sotheby's, but Sotheby's has the biggest BS line I've ever heard. Oh, well, we're international and we have international buyers. That is the biggest lie that's perpetuated by any major company they've ever seen. Because if it was true, then you could challenge that person to say, okay, why don't you go get a list of people, okay? Go get a list of people whereby you can have that list of people where Sotheby's listed the house, and what they saw there was an international name from another country other than Canada in your case, other than the States in my case, that came from somewhere else, right? And that Sotheby's procured that directly because it would be indicated in a double-ended deal. And they just can't do it. So that's not the way the marketing really works, is it? The way it really works is really 3 stages. Once we get through, and let's go back to this, once we get through the conditioning and staging, we are ready for phase 1, which is the preparation. So we're going to take our professional photography. We're going to take our floor plans, either digital or walkthroughs, professional videos, drones, etc. It's the basic preparation. And by the way, it stuns me to this day how many people think their iPhone or their iPad is a professional photographer. It's a joke, right? It's nonsensical. But there are still people out there, and especially at high end, I was stunned to see how many people Mickey Mouse the pictures and didn't actually prepare this property digitally the right way. And like we say to people, we're memorializing the digital footprint, and we only have one opportunity to do that. Then it goes into MLS and syndicates. And I explained this to you. This never existed until 1995-96 in the States, where Realtor.com was the very first one to digitize the MLS. They're the very first ones, 95, 96. That's the precursor. Go do the history. And I knew one of the original CEOs, Alan Dalton. He's from Boston. So I got a lot of explanation how this tech company hijacked the National Association of Realtors to be able to use that name, Realtor, right, and have that in place. And so they went out and syndicated that to the world. And it took a while, because 95 to about 2005, 10 years before the world begins to adopt it, more so because our cell phones hadn't become so smart where we could get it there. It was mostly desktops, then laptops, then iPads, then phones. So there's an evolution there. But that's the way the business now works, is boom. If you do a good job with conditioning and staging, and you prepare this correctly, and you do a good copywritten description. By the way, copywritten descriptions to me are just horrible. It has 3 bedrooms. It has no, tell the lifestyle of the place, right? Walk down to the beautiful park here, first class schools there. These sellers have loved it because of this part of the lifestyle. Sell the sizzle in the copywriting. Anybody can read an MLS sheet, right? So now you go into this syndication. So boom, it's out there. And why is syndication marketing so important? Especially, you're probably all watching what happens in the States with us, where there's an attack on buyer agency and whether NAR has been colluding to fix commissions. It's all ridiculous too. But syndication marketing has been the thing that's always worked. That if I control that listing, and I said this earlier in this presentation to you all, if I control it and set it up correctly and syndicate it, 89% of the time on a sold in my marketplace, the last time I checked the stats, it's going to be another brokerage that comes to me. And that's true for any company, no matter what their size is. And you should get that key critical stat, because if you come from a smaller brokerage, and now a lot of you I know in here are at EXP because this is Northern Alliance. Okay, so what? Just because EXP is big, it doesn't mean that you individually are explaining this correctly to somebody, because EXP's grandiosity doesn't sell anything, right? You sell. So it's nice to be part of this Northern Alliance where here you are, free coaching and training. Absolutely. That's all your benefit here. But now you have to go out and you have to explain this correctly to a seller. And as you can notice, I'm teaching you to be bulletproof against the things you're going to hear from the competition that are nonsense, because they're not explaining how listing and selling a property really works. This is how it really works for any of you, for any of us. It's the same way. So what we're teaching you is that this better listing discussion all started with us taking an inventory of how does the business really work. I'm not even into the discussion yet. I'm telling you how to be strategically prepared and where the attacks will come from. Then you get into this difference. You see, I have passive marketing and I have proactive. I should say reactive, and I'll probably change this because I've been using that word instead of passive. But a lot of agents will go out there, syndicate this, and especially in Canada, you've been all lucky and lazy because the market's so dang hot. If you just get the thing up there, all these co-brokes are going to come and help you sell it with a frenzy. But what happens if it slows down? What happens if it's overpriced? You better learn how to get proactive again. And if you do, especially if you're young, a lot of young people are just becoming reactive to life because they can hide behind their phone. They can look at Instagram and get some delusion that they're going to build a business on Instagram. Nonsense. Maybe a good support tool. It's nonsense. It's not going to help you build a business because it's passive. You're doing something there, hoping somebody comes to you. And yes, you can validate it from time to time. I got a DM. What are you talking about? And I sold $1 million property. Good. Is that a sustainable, predictable model? No. Why? Because it's all hope. And hope is not a marketing plan. I hope that when I put this post out there, and I hope that I even have a good strategy for my posts, I hope that somebody reacts and comes to me. Whereas proactive marketing to sell this house, and by the way, to get listings to begin with, it's aggressive. And some of it's obvious. The for sale sign, getting a nice property brochure, making sure the digital footprint is up on a really nice looking website where it can be presented, using YouTube and Facebook marketing to push your walk and talk videos around, Instagram to post it there. Sure, all of that social media is available, but it's more so the just listed postcards. It's the broker tours. And what I don't even have on here now that we've gotten very aggressive with is telemarketing to say, I just listed this. I'd love to send you a sheet so you can see how it affects your value. And in the case that you have some friends or family want to come into the neighborhood, that's coupled with the just listed postcards. I could go on and on and on. I won't, other than the open house. I can't believe how many people are lazy enough to not understand the power of an open house for several reasons. One, in this day and age, every time I signify that we're going to do an open house, it's a new piece of what kind of content? Go back one step, syndicated content. Remember when you put a listing up the first time, it only syndicates once. But every time you run an open house, it's a new syndicated piece of content out to every major application. And I think Realtor.ca is probably the best one up there. I don't know that Zillow and Redfin at all. I don't even know if Redfin exists up there. But my point being is that It's a new piece of content going into the weekend. And you all know that we're living off of our phones. So if I'm walking around Ottawa and I want to go see properties and I can go on my phone to my favorite app, I can see which ones are open. And there's nothing like face-to-face selling. Nothing, nothing beats it. And everything that we talk about, whether it's procuring a listing lead that becomes a prospect appointment, it is all to get the appointment. So how great is it that every weekend, and I do these every weekend, unless I have a family event, I am 90 minutes in each house. I'd have to look at my schedule and maybe I can show you to prove it. I'd have to look at it, but I'll guarantee you I'm in at least 3 or 4 houses every weekend for 90 minutes, right? Let's see if I can. Saturday, Kidder, 9 Kidder, 10 to 11:30, Dern, 12:30 to 2. Sunday, North Glen, 10:30 to 12. It's on my calendar. Okay, 3 open houses. Kidder is 850,000. Dern Street is 8 million. North Glen is 2.95. Right. All of these came through the systematic approach. Not one of them didn't. Right. All of them. It's not I knew somebody. All of that came from there. Right. So the idea is that open house is going to put me in a position where I'm in the feedback mechanism now. So I'm pushing on that marketing to get bodies through that property. Now, if syndication marketing gets the agent, like yesterday, 8 million, first co-broke showing, somebody comes in with their buyer, I'm able to go through and get the first feedback, right? Good showing. Guy just gives me honest feedback sitting in the lobby, says, to tell you the truth, it just didn't sing to me. No problem. Awesome. Appreciate you coming, right? And I get feedback. And I'm in there and I tell my seller, hey, you know what? These suitcases that are hiding in the extra bathroom got to go. Put them in the closets, and let's minimize some personal stuff. So I get feedback from the marketplace and me. And so my seller sees at $8 million, I am executing this plan. We are underway. And I'm going right back in this weekend to keep that momentum going. And he sees that, right? Now, all of that is going to lead to the pricing work that we do. And I'm not going to get into that today. I'm happy to come back for a Northern Alliance training where we really get specific on the technical stuff I do for listing presentation. But suffice to say, I do an actual analysis, right? Where I actually take sold prices, divide them by assessed. And I've taught many Canadians that are getting one-on-one coaching from me already how to do this. And it has worked just fine there, like it does here, because it's just math. So learning some basic math, and then even outsourcing that to somebody. I pay $20 for an analysis to be done for us so that we don't get bogged down in it. We have experts that can roll this stuff through. I can look at the analysis and I can bring that with me. So that is going to lead to, how do we do when we guessed at the price based on our math? Are we doing okay? Do people think we're worth 8 million, or are we too high? Because we had math to easily get there. We were at 2,000 a foot, which we thought was cheap for what this was based on some sold, blah, 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 blah. But I'm getting feedback. Now, if I could hear tumbleweeds, if this guy hadn't come this week, it might be evidence that even though we have it priced at where we think is reasonable, the condition and staging look delicious online. And by the way, let's go visual for you, right? So you can actually see a system really working. So you see it's not theoretical. So let's go in here and I'm going to show you what this looks like. Okay, so here it is. So this is the actual property that I'm talking about. You can see quintessential Boston. That's actually the government, the state house right there. So it's right there, quintessential Boston, in an area called Beacon Hill. Beautiful property, right? Stage beautiful, big windows, etc. Really sexy place, right? So again, this is exactly being executed, as a formula, right? So we're not guessing. So the feedback's coming in. But the math that we use, okay, let me stop my screen for a second. Maybe I can even give you a teaser on the math. And then I promise you I will pause and we can go over this, but I want to get to how I got into the house. But you see how much strategic thinking went into this before I ever try to rush into a house. I'm not just listing these things because I have a resume. I'm a coach. They don't know me. These people don't know me like you know me. They have no idea who I am. They have no idea what my resume is. And I'm up against a lot of Goliath brands because I'm still an independent brand, right? So this is a level playing field for you and for me. It's just that I'm ready and I'm strategically ready. And by the way, when you look at this stupid, simple infographic, it's stunning that it's that simple. This is a 5th grade understanding of a process. And in fact, it's visually 5th grade. And by the way, the irony is that looks like a buoy on the side of a ship. that if the ship were going down, you hang on to it. And that's exactly what I try to tell people. When in doubt on a telemarketing call, when in doubt in a strategic, listing presentation, hang on to this damn thing for dear life and just figure out where you're at and talk about that one point because it works. So then the math that we go into, he said, I'm going to try to find this quickly. If not, we'll move off of it. But the math, Sarah, you want to say anything there? Well, I think I muted everybody because I heard a little background noise. But if you want to interrupt me while I dig this up, all good. Have any comments there, Sarah, Corey, if you're still with me?
I'm still here. It helps keep everyone on the same track when you're going through everything and just makes it really clear for them. And it's easier for everyone just to understand.
Let's see if this is, a second. I promise you, I'm going to show you this because I'm going to actually check myself. The reason I'm going to do this with you, I'm actually going to check myself if I can pull the math up because I've had enough in the first couple of weeks to be able to do that. Maybe not. And if not, I promise the next time I come back, we'll go do this. But one more shot at it. And if not, we'll move on. Okay, can't find it, unfortunately, Sarah, so I'll move on here. So now, all of that, okay, all of that gets me to the point that I'm ready. I'll show you one more thing here on my screen so you understand the core. And today's idea is the core and fundamental stuff. I'll come back, I promise, and give you more of the technical stuff, but I don't want to run out of time to do Q&A. So let's just show you the full seller booklet here, okay? So those 7 points became a strategic plan, okay? That's what they became. So there's the 7 points in the infographic. And then I just went down and I said, if I was sitting in front of them, and this is how I went back to not having to give it away for free, I could just give away my words for free. And this is what to do. So if you're thinking about pricing, here's what to consider, right? When you get to conditioning, because one leads to that, here's what to do. And I just kept going. And I just sat at Starbucks and just kept writing basically what my words were, my thoughts were. And again, I thought these were the universal thoughts that we would all have to go through. And of course, over time, I have some updates to marketing that I'm making now in this plan, but it's not like a huge divergence. Once the big rocks are in the jar, you just tweak it. And we just wrote it all out. And we turned it into this beautiful, I guess you could call it a marketing piece, but it's instructional. Sure, we give a little teaser resume, but we're not sitting there bragging about ourselves, which is all the ego marketing that we do. We're showing a few properties here to say, yes, this plan has been successful. And if you wanted to see more, you can type in griffinfeaturedproperties.com and you would end up at the website seeing all the actives and the solds because we gamed our website, right? We went into the website business, believe it or not, just to game it so that the resume could be there. So we're leaving breadcrumbs on the trail, but we're more about that gift of information that empowers them because we believe in the magnetic attraction. That's magnetic marketing. They're drawn back into you. So that's how it works, right? Now, in addition to this, what you have are pictures and details. Let me see if I can find just another technical analysis, and then we'll go into Q&A.
Danny, we have ours printed too. I know you have yours printed, but they look like a nice magazine brochure that we mail out.
Yeah, because it becomes the more professional you can make this look, the better off you are. Okay. So here I found a probate. Now this is a completely other end of the spectrum to show you that this is universally like appealing to whomever. A strategy is a strategy is a strategy. So no matter what property you're working on, you stick to it. So what we would have done in this case is we have listing paperwork, net sheet, technical analysis. So the two things that I'm going to have when I actually go to the house. So we start off giving free information, which includes what they need, which is the plan. Then we give them pictures and details that sold around theirs. And hopefully we know what they think it's worth. So if they say it's $1 million, we'll go a little over $1 million, a little below. We'll give them a nice CMA. And I hate that word CMA. We'll give them neighborhood sales. that's sold around them, because the analysis only comes if I come to your house. There's no analysis. I'm showing you information. That's not an analysis. I'm never going to defer like to some internet tool and say that's analysis, because it doesn't work. What analyzes things is the agent who comes in and says, okay, here's where you're at. Do these things and you can increase value. And here's why. Here's the math. Oh, by the way, let's do a net sheet now to show you all the costs, including my commission, so you can focus on the net. So instead of focusing on my commission and driving me crazy, focus on your net. Don't worry about my commission. Let's focus on your net. In my experience, 95% of the time, they go straight to the bottom line and it's a pleasant surprise, right? Or they reveal, oh God, that's going to be tight. And they're not beating me up on commission, because I don't allow them to have their process. This is my process of education, because it's the way the business really works, right? So if you were to take a quick look at this, and this was a distress sale, and I could tell you this case study right now, this was a probate, okay? Meaning somebody died. In fact, he died in the house, and he died in a very indigent way, meaning he had really become an acute alcoholic. The toilet wasn't working. The heat wasn't working. And he was a complete hoarder, okay? So when I go to see this house, I look at the property a couple different ways. I take the quarter-mile radius around there, and then I get more specific, and I say, okay, I want single-family homes in this part of Boston, which is West Roxbury, where I grew up. And I'm going to guesstimate 475 to 650K, because he told us that he had some investors making offers in the fours, right? We see an assessed value of 472. Let's just assume that that's a lagging indicator of value, meaning the market's always out in front of it by 12 months or so. So assessed values are always chasing market value, but it becomes a wonderful thing to measure against. So what we do is we take the people in these two analyses and we say, okay, we're going to take solds only. Forget about for sales. They throw you off. Things expire. They don't go for that number. This tells the truth. So again, how does the business really work? So we get a bunch of solds. And again, these are just single family homes in West Roxbury there. But then I want to see the neighborhood effect too. How strong is the immediate neighborhood? So we'll just take everything in a quarter mile. You'll notice, because I'm talking about an extreme distress sale, that the low could be 462 on that analysis, and it could be 462 on this one. So it's consistent. So the worst property sold at 98% of its assessed value. So you see, this is just simple math, division. Again, we're trying to keep this elementary for people so they understand it. So all we did was, what you would do is you'd take the solds around it, and we just took some of the math out. And again, if this is overwhelming to you, delegate it to somebody. We can get these done for 20 bucks a piece, right? So now all of a sudden we say, well, if you're in an extraordinary condition against the competition, you might be able to expect 122%, which he would have been able to if he was clean. If you're average, you can be a 533. And if you're low, you can be 462. Now, with a radius, it's about the same. So what we decided to say is, okay, we think inventory at the entry level is so damn low. Why don't we try 550? And I was up against, I had to actually sign a listing contract that excluded a couple of investors, because with probates, you're always up against the investor who has the same list and they're making cash as is, whereas you don't have to touch it. So one guy had come in at 420. Someone was at 400. Someone was at 423. Then he starts to tell them, I'm hanging around. Guy panics. He goes to 475. And then he goes to 495. Supposedly he put it in writing. I said, okay, all I have to do, I said to the owner, owner's brother, all I have to be is 5% better than that, right? So give me a shot at it. And I'll exclude him from the contract, because he's not going anywhere. And if somebody can get it for that, God bless him. Well, make a long story short, the market was a little soft. Most people thought it was way too much work, because it was. But I got a couple of people that really started to be interested. And out of the blue, I got a co-broke. So I got a direct buyer, and she was going through pre-qualification with my wife because she wanted her daughter to go in there. And so we went through that. So I had that. And then I get another co-broke who comes in, who's a flipper with her husband. And so she gives me a 450 offer. I get this other woman who says, I wouldn't give him more than 400. But I tell the other buyer, I got this other person sniffing around. And I said, and he has he has an offer on the table for 475 cash, whereas is whereas. So the only way I can get you this deal, I tell her, I'll drop my commission from 2.5% on the co-broke side to 2%, and you have to drop your commission. And I need 505 to get that deal done. Well, I'll be danged if she doesn't go right to the 505. She was desperate for a project or whatever was happening. She had some money she needed to move. She buys it. Okay. Now it's under agreement. It's going to take a little while. We need a license to sell. But look at how I did for my client. I know how I did for my client. I know that this thing should have been in that 460 range on both of these analyses. Yet I got him up until, let's go to specific, I got him pretty close to an average price, right? I mean, percentage wise, 505. So he took it in an instant. Why? Because he had been educated. There's 7 steps to doing this. And then to analyze the current situation, now that I see it, here's there. And I did recommend what to do. Keep filling the dumpster with shit until it's down to the sellable things that we can sell, because you want to sell them yourself at Facebook, yard sale, or we'll do this. So I go to this house, I give the presentation, which included well, first of all, the properties. These properties would have been printed out, right? Pictures and details. Let me see if that was on this here. I don't know. Oops, hang on. I don't know if I had this on here in this email. Yeah, I didn't have it in the email. I was going to show you some pictures and details, what they look like for us. Again, you have your own version, but we only gave them, you saw so many, right? We only gave them so many of these things. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we have an outlier that really screwed up the math, and we pull our outliers out so that doesn't really screw up our math. We still show them, but we see what's happening, right? This one must have been rehabbed on Baker Street because it was assessed at $495, and it probably just got a lot of money and it sold for a high price. So it's a rehab, right? We know that just by looking at the math. But again, I was giving this analysis, and then all I needed to do from there is a net sheet, which was here. So what we did was we said, okay, you have math that says you could be 550 to 600. Now, we don't think it's there, but we're going to show you this math. We're going to put our broker fee right in your face, okay? And our new net sheets have both a seller fee and a buyer agent fee, because that's what's going to change in the States. And then we have all the tax and deed stamps and things like this that are all tightened up, right? So we have this analysis, and this is what he's staring at, okay? He's staring at real money. Now, he told me in the house he'd like to be around 500. And I said, yeah, we're not going to get the 565. It's just too much distress. But I do think we could be 550 and under to see how we do. And I got plenty of people through the house at a 550 ask. It was just getting rejected at that number, but it was still good enough to get an offer that got him the number he wanted, and I netted him what he really wanted, and so it was a no-brainer. But you can see that's the analysis portion. It's simple. You just learn how to do one of those. You put it onto a net sheet. And again, I do these net sheets prior to going in the house. So if I have to adjust it and say, yeah, now that I'm here, I think you tend to the lower end of this range versus the higher end. But it's all in front of them with math. So now what do I have? I have a whole system that I can rely on that starts with, before we ever go in the house, you're going to get a copy of this plan. You're going to get pictures and details of properties that sold around you, okay? And if I can find a market update, maybe this has the front page. That's what the market update looks like. So they're going to get one of these single pages, pictures and details of properties that sold around them, a 1-page statistical market update that shows them the exact direction of current market pricing, and the plan, right? Now, I only put the infographic in there when I'm presenting. They don't get this. They get this when I mail. When I go to the house, I can't read a booklet. So this is the cheat sheet. Now, I went to one down the street to his neighbor, which was a 950. And we told him, hey, we're taking care of the neighbor down the street. We noticed that you're in a similar situation where somebody's passed. We'd like to come in and give you this. I went to her house, sat at the dining room table. She had all 3 components spread out. She had the booklet, she had the pictures and details, and she had the 1-page market update, right? She had it all there. She said, thank you. This was very helpful. Albeit I already knew it, it was good to see it in the right order and explain. Then I go for the nickel tour. So here's how the listing presentation goes. Now that I've said all this, I go to the house, I stop out front, I'm there early. If I don't know the neighborhood, I've driven around to make sure that neighborhood effect is good or bad. I look directly across the street. If I have any problem houses around here, what do I see? I look at the exterior. I look at some stuff that's funky about this house. This had like weird asphalt shingles on the outside that were covered, kind of a weird old school thing to do. But, cheapies do cheapy things, right? But a beautiful, elegant old house. I meet her at the door. Thank you so much for having me over. I appreciate that. If you don't mind giving me a tour of the property before we sit down, and I can spread my information out and give you my tips on what to do, what not to do, and show you the analysis. Great. We go through the whole house. I get to see what I should tell her to do and not to do. And then we're walking and talking, and I'm saying everything positive. Even if I think there's a negative, that goes into my head, but I don't say it. I can't believe how many people go, oh, you're gonna have to fix this. And nope. Wow, wonderful. Look at this banister. How gorgeous this is. And I shake it. They don't make it like this anymore. Look at these beautiful 6-panel doors. Look at these beautiful fur floors. Are these under everywhere? Look at how they've aged. Those shine up beautifully, right? And I go in the kitchen and it's funky. I said, oh, I like this. This is workable, right? You got this nice butler's pantry, old school swinging door. That was more like a butler setup. I get it. So I'm saying positive things, even about the things that are negative. Then, wonderful. Thanks so much for the tour. Could we sit down at the table where I can spread things out and I can look at you? Yeah, sure. Come on over here. Because she was kind of moving towards the couch. No, I'm the authority. I want to sit across from you. This is how I want to do it. Now, I have this out. I take this out of my file first and I slide across. I said, I want to talk about my 7 steps. I can see you have the booklet there, but I want to talk about them and just give you a little, tips on what to do and what not to do based on what I've just seen. But before I get started, what's most important to you? And I listen. And in her case, it was getting the tips, having an opportunity to talk to her, literally, not that they're all alive anymore, 12 brothers and sisters, to see if anybody wants to step up and buy it out of the family to do the right thing as the administrator of the estate. Wonderful. Now, you might all panic and say, oh my gosh, after all that, she might not give it to you. Right, right. But that's what we authentically own. We are people for others. We are people for others. We are people for others. It's a whole philosophy, but it's the core philosophy. I don't need a long mission statement. Be a person for others is our mission statement at our company, period. What that means is when in doubt, are you serving them? Are you answering their questions? And if you don't know the answers, are you going to be a resource? So all we have to do. And if I framework it like this, they're staying inside of those guardrails. So now she sits there and tells me those things. I said, wonderful, let me cover those. And I just go through this with my thoughts. Okay. Most important thing with your conditioning is get everything out of here that's not staying, but don't get rid of the stuff that stages you. So I'm glad you said that because I was going to get rid of everything. No, this dining room table, that thing looks good in this room. We move these couches around, right? The beds just get centered off the walls wherever we have them, but get rid of everything in the basement. The basement needs to be completely empty because it's older, but it's not in bad shape. And we need to show it bright and clean. Get rid of all the personal items that are not going to enhance the staging. So I literally am giving her this advice, right? Then, by the way, when this started, I knew my challenge was there was a brother who had a family member or a friend who they wanted to list the property. So we had to kind of fight our way in there. So what happens is he comes in the middle of the presentation, right? Right about its staging. Hey, Mark, nice to meet you. Thanks so much for coming. Everything's all laid out on the table so he can see it's this professional thing going on. And I engage him because I know I'm thrilled now. I got a chance to neutralize the guy that probably doesn't want me. Well, make a long story short, not only does that change, he has a house in my other marketplace, Cape Cod, where I actually live. He's like, oh my gosh, Danny Griffin Realty Group? I'm like, yeah, that's me. Why? Because I have a house right down the street from your office. Boom. Right? All of a sudden, what seems like an obstacle becomes a benefit. And by the way, flash forward to the end of this, he follows me outside. Thank you so much. That was so helpful. I really appreciate you. I might reach out to sell this and this, and I might end up, right? Just positive commentary. I don't take that for granted. It's nice to end that way, but I don't trust the situation until I trust the situation, right? So we go through all of this. Now we've answered a lot of questions. Now I say, okay, any questions about that? Did I cover everything I need to cover? Yeah, that was great. Wonderful. Okay, great. Let's get to the math. And then I break out the analysis and I break out the net sheet. And I say, that's under agreement down the street. Now, that's the benefit of having some resume. I just put a distress sale, a tiny fraction the size of this house, not on this corner lot that you have, you have 3 floors of beauty, right? That's under agreement for 505, if you can believe that. That's how hot this neighborhood is. So now we're stepping up into another price range. You have math all the way up to, in their case, it was $1 million plus or minus, right? I said, I don't think we should be over $1 million with what it needs, but I still think with a straight face, you can be in the 9s here, right? Based on the math. And so we looked at that, and that's what she was able to go away with. So, let's conclude there and say, she walked away from that presentation completely empowered. And what I did say very clearly is say, when should I follow up? Well, I think I can have all this out of here by June. Good for you. That's pretty quick. So good for you. So I think you can get out of here. And I need to offer this to the family. I said, great. What we will continue to do, and here's just a key little, I'll plant this seed in your head. What we'll continue to do over the next couple of weeks is continue to give you solds in the $900 to $1 million range in West Roxbury and update you on the market update each time we get a new one if you're not quite ready to go before the beginning of July, right? And all we ask is that if something comes up and you're talking to other people and we missed a discussion about something, please give me an opportunity to respond. That's it. Now I could get out of the house. I call Kathy, my telemarketer in this case, and Laura, who's the client care manager. They're both waiting to say, all right, who's responsible for follow-up? Because if it's go, it's Laura. Client care, get the contract out, get it signed digitally, get the pictures going, get everything going. If it's not, Kathy, watch this thing closely for the next week or two and make sure that information is being sent out digitally and physically to her and stay tight to her, because that's when the wolves start to show up after we've empowered them with all this information, and we want to maintain our tight relationship with them, right? And that's how it works, folks. So I spent a lot of time telling you how to get this ready, because that's where you want to be when you go in the house. I don't wing anything. In fact, over time, it's become so systematized. I'm like Rain Man, and I freak out if everything's not in order, because that means I failed my team by not having everything tight in a system. And in this case, there was a little chink in the armor where Kathy, my telemarketer, I did legitimately have a buyer who wanted to see it, but I never sell my way into a listing. He's got a buyer. I have a developer who would like to see it. But in the meantime, let me just come see it for that reason. But I'm going to empower you with tips on what to do and what not to do to get top dollar, and an analysis that includes a net sheet to show you what you walk away with. That's always the pitch. That's always the benefit to them of me arriving. Not that I have a buyer. That makes me sound like everybody else. And that's the last thing I want, right? So it's all about that preparation. Now, to tease the future call that I may do with you, how do you apply this in a telemarketing or a door knocking or a conversational, way? You recognize the context, but it always comes down to the same offer for sellers. I have pictures and details of properties that sold around you straight from MLS, just like realtors. I'm going to give you a one-page statistical market update that shows you the exact direction of current market pricing. And as a bonus, I'm going to give you a copy of the plan that we customize for our clients. May I do that? 1, 2, 3 pieces of information. By the way, why are you thinking about selling it? Oh, somebody passed and nobody's living in the house. I'm sorry to hear that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated would you say you are right now? You're a 10? Well, what I could do, instead of sending the information to you, I could bring it. And while I'm there in the house, I could tell you the tips on what to do and what not to do based on that plan. In other words, I'd customize it for you. But I'll also do an analysis of the solds around you and show you what I think it would sell for and what you'd walk away with after all expenses for state purposes. May I do that? Now, a lot of times they're not ready because they don't know you. They take the information first, and then you go back to, hey, did you get it? Yes, wonderful, was helpful. Like I said, I'd love to stop by and give you tips on what to do and what not to do and do an analysis for you. May we set that up? So it's just the easiest thing in the world, because I'm 1, 2, 3 pieces of information, and the benefit to having me over is also free. It's free tips on what to do, which is a free customization or plan I already gave you, and a free analysis that really empowers you to make decisions going forward, including, by the way, down the line, when we get into negotiation, you're not going to get caught off guard. You've already been educated about the math. And so what we do when we present our offers to them when they come in, we do a fresh net sheet, right? So they don't get caught up in emotion. Remember how we started? Now in the heat of the moment, here's what this offer is. We know it's not enough, but here's what it nets you. Okay, all right, we're close. All of a sudden, they start to give us instant price reductions during the negotiation because they had a number in mind, right? So it's stunning how organized something like this can be. All right, Sarah, I see my hour is up, right? The hourglass has run out of sand. So let me see if we have some questions. JF, good to see you up there in the corner. It's like Hollywood Squares here in the States. Good to see you, brother. Okay, maybe we have a little Q&A because I know we have your team, but we can
do a quick
just a
Q&A.
few minutes.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, it's a lot, and we have to cover that, right? So.
Does anybody have any questions they want to ask?
Oh, look at young Pat Nadeau looking natty over there, brother, with a tight haircut, the smart looking glasses, the tie on, old school. I love it.
Sleeves rolled
That
up
looks
because
good.
JT isn't working in
Looks,
our office. It's scary.
yeah. It's 95 in Boston yesterday. I was showing that property. 95. It was oppressive. The broker comes in old school with a suit on. He's dripping wet. His hands are dripping wet. I'm like, yeah, that's not a good look, buddy. When you're showing an 8 million, you don't come in dripping wet. So yeah, get a fan. Anything real quick? Yeah? No? Okay. So I will come back and I will do some more of the analysis stuff if you want, Sarah, or we can go next time. We go into some of the scripting. But again, it's a hard concept to cover when it's brand new to you. But I guarantee you, it's so dang simple if you stay in that lane. And I am the crash test dummy. Okay. I went from listing and selling properties in and around $400,000 because I hate to knock Craig Proctor because he was so good to me and we became so close. And I coached 200 people in a group there, as the head of his mastery program. But what happened to Craig happened to a lot of you. We got sucked up into this internet belief that internet leads were going to be the savior, and they're just not. Roll up your sleeves like Pat. Go out and get in front of people that own a median above, priced place, and make a good value offer to somebody of information, right? I mean, it's what it is. It's just believe me by going to my website. Don't even believe me. Go look at where it says SOLD. Most of those high-end properties came just like this. We picked up the phone. We made that offer of information. It got me in to give the presentation. And by then I was in such a competitionless lane because nobody was doing it like that. People were coming in, look at my resume. Yes, I lose, right? Yeah, well, you're a small company. Yeah, I am. Okay, so you have this perception, I can't stop it. You think Sotheby's are this big person. You're not listening, so you're not a good avatar for me. But I bet if it expires again, you're going to be all ears, aren't you? Right? So I can't do business with everybody, but I can definitely do good business with the people who get me and it resonates. And most of them are the guy I'm doing business with at $8 million is a wildly successful biotech venture capitalist over in Cambridge next to Harvard. The guy at 13.5 million is a wildly successful entrepreneur whose family's been multiple generations in the alcohol business, alcohol distribution. So they're all like professionals, right? And a lot of the people I showed it to, although he had his own broker, I showed it to a professional business owner yesterday who's obviously slaughtered it. He's looking at an $8 million property, right? So they're just normal people that want a normal conversation with you. And so if you get all insecure and you start telling them how great you are or how long your resume is, it's lost to them. It's not what they want to hear. What they want to hear is information that empowers them to make a decision one way or another. And no is okay. It's a good thing. You have to get a lot of clean no's. And when I teach telemarketing on Fridays to our coaching members, I'm telling them a good clean no is good. You're going to need 9 or 10 good clean no's to find that one listing prospect that you're going to protect from the wolves. And by the way, the biggest wolf is yourself, right? You'll neglect follow up. I'll guarantee you that. And that's something that needs to be learned.